There was so much about my life that I couldn't change, but I could change how I saw it. And I could take the raw material of my experience and make something of it. And that was sort of an artistic process. And that I just lifted wholesale to my life.
The Meaning Mindset with Rabbi Ron Li-Paz, Season 3, more fascinating guests and thought-provoking conversations. Well, BJ Miller, it's really an honor and a pleasure to have you with me in this conversation. I've been listening to you and reading you since, I don't know, any number of years ago. I don't know when you were on with Oprah, but obviously that drew you to a lot of people's attention. I think
Mm,
I heard your TED Talk, saw
mm.
that 5, 6, 7 years ago. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I, as a rabbi, obviously spend my life, my work in and out of hospitals and people's homes. So clearly at the beginning of life, whether it's a naming or a bris or middle of life, the various events that happen, and
Mm,
certainly at the end of life. And I have a certain, I'd say, acquired reverence for the end of life and appreciation for the quality of the
mm,
experience and when it, I think, is better and when it's worse. And I've learned a lot from you about that. One thing that's been remarkable to me, first of all, the book that you wrote with Shoshana Berger, A Beginner's Guide to the End, and we'll show the book at the end of the conversation also.
mhm.
Yeah, I just want to say about this book, you may have heard this said before. My when we had kids, we were given what to expect when you're expecting and what to expect when, and people give that to you wrapped
Mhm.
up and with a smile. It's an
Mhm.
easy gift. I don't know that people are as comfortable talking about giving the book about the end of the spectrum. "Hey, I got you this fantastic book. You're gonna love it."
Oh, yes, I really understand where you're coming from there, Rabbi. Yeah, it's been it's like I cannot tell you how many times Shoshana and I have heard, "Oh, we love your book, and I've got 20 people who would really benefit from it, but I could never give it to them because it sends a signal." So, yeah, it is a tricky book to receive, and it makes the point, among others, that we just cannot. We can celebrate the beginning of life, but the end of life, the other end of that circle, is a different psychological, spiritual enterprise altogether, or it seems to be.
It seems to be, and obviously, we know that different cultures do this differently. One of the things that I
Mhm.
think about and that you write about is what I think of as the kind of lost art of accompaniment. Is that a good way to think about this?
Mm. It's a
What's your
beautiful
thought on
way.
that? How,
Yes,
on
Rabbi. Yep.
what that art looks like at its finest and how we might have conversations within families
Mm.
and communities, whatever those kinds of communities are, that lead us toward that lost art of accompaniment.
It's fun to think about absolutes. Um, but for the most part, our experience on earth is a relational one. I don't know that I exist in a vacuum. I exist in relationship to you. You and I here are talking, we're having a conversation, we're being with each other, and we are creating in the moment together from that relationship. And you can't take it apart. So the scientific method, modern life loves to reduce, take things, break things into their elemental parts or their constituents, hyper focus, hyper specialize. And while there's a lot, especially in the health sciences, that is gleaned and comes from that enterprise, um, importantly, plenty doesn't. A lot gets lost in that atomization, um, in that reductionism. So, what I think of it, in short, what many of us might feel moving through healthcare, for example, again, for your audience, I am a physician, so I will reference healthcare in a lot of ways. I'm no big fan of the healthcare system per se. I think it does a lot of things well and some things really not well. And maybe top of the list of things that it doesn't do very well is this accompaniment piece. Physician, we are trained to look for what we can fix. And if we can't fix something, we have this phrase, well, I'm so sorry, there's nothing more we can do. And off you go. But of course, as fellow human beings, there is always something we can do, even if that is simply just being with each other. You don't have to come up with just the right thing to say. You don't have to really do anything. It's that simple and that difficult. I think it is really hard for us, I think, to just be. Our sense of worth and value often comes from our utility or our accomplishments. Um, but I think in the great enterprise of creation, we matter because we exist. And working from that place, being with each other from that place, that degree of acceptance, um, is where this kind of healing flows. Is this is the source of the accompaniment and the healing that can flow from accompaniment. So anyway, that's a lot of words, Rabbi. I wonder if any of those stick to the insides of your mind there.
They do. I'm writing right now, thinking and reading and writing a lot on perception right now, and the moral aspects of perception. And
Mm,
rather than just the neurological and ophthalmological
mm,
aspects, what is it that we owe one another, regardless of
mm,
who the other is, in terms of our seeing?
mm,
And what is the healing property of seeing? What happens when we actually see one another? And I think there's an
mm,
aspect of that that is part of what you're saying and part of this conversation, part of what you've written, which is there are times when we as humans become less and more visible. And either it's because we choose invisibility because we're
mm,
ashamed or we don't feel worthy, ashamed. We don't feel like the world needs to look at us, or why
mhm,
would it?
mhm,
Or because we'd love to be seen because it's so human to need to be seen, to know that we matter to other people, but we are made to feel
yeah,
invisible, and I think about the effect on kids and on, every single one of us that just we need food, we need water, and we need to matter to
mm,
other people. Going back to what you said about the relationship. So the accompaniment to
mhm,
me is about a willingness to say, "I see you, and I'm not going to avert my gaze just because I can't fix you, or just because you, in my culture, are in a place that makes me uncomfortable, where I have to think about what to say. I still need to, as you say,
mhm.
be present for you."
Beautiful. I love that, and it's so easy for us to get myopic, and it and why one of the ingredients I think to doing to accompanying each other is our own homework of self-awareness and watching our gaze, literally or figuratively, in what we see, how we see each other, perhaps as transactions or means to ends or other things that can slip in very easily. It's I don't mean to shame any of us. This is sort of the currency of our time in a lot of ways. So it's very easy to project agendas onto each other, and you really have to. In my experience, you have to really practice this broader field of awareness that is bigger than your self-interests or your wants, etc. So anyway, there's a lot to the anatomy of accompaniment that you're pointing us to, and it's a beautiful place. I mean, I this is especially in the frame of end of life. I think more than anything, I think our desire to be fully seen as we are um, is up there with sort of the primary driver, or it's certainly an enormous driver. So yeah, you're putting your finger on something really important, especially I think for our times.
And you mentioned the word transaction, and we know that we're living in an age and a society where we are very transactional. I think about, Buber's I thou versus I it. The I it is in place all the time, and justifiably so, because we need things to be done. And we need people to function in our world. And we need the nurse to come in and not be the nurse, the woman who or man who, just the person who takes the bedpan away or relieves us of pain. But what if we could transform those interactions in healthcare when people are, uh, you know, naked and
Mm,
afraid? Somebody said to me years ago, I don't remember what the context was, but probably early in my career of visiting people, that there's something so leveling about the hospital experience because whether it's the CEO of a Fortune 500 company or the cleaner who cleans their building, they're both in a robe with their butts hanging out, in a
Mm.
hospital and facing the reality of being
Mhm.
mortal.
Mhm.
Um, is there a way that a medical system that
Mhm.
we can get to where we're doing that better? And by the way, my question to you also is, are there best practices? Is somebody really getting this anywhere in the world that you're aware of?
Well, let's start with the first part of that question. You know, I'm biased from the lens that I kind of often see folks through, which is, uh, a vulnerable lens, an intimate lens, a mortal lens. Um, but if I, I think I think there's probably many or most or maybe close to all of us now post pandemic might agree that our healthcare system is is if not broken is teetering. Um, Whether you're a patient, yeah, or a clinician, I think it is become exceedingly a very difficult place to function. Um, and I think again with my bias here, but I think if we can regain, and I say regain because before the industrial revolution, technological revolution, sort of mid 19th century forward, the medical model of objectification, study hard enough and will cure all problems, including death, um, is a very seductive selling, sale, and a lot of us have bought into it. We want it. We're complicit. We want our physicians to be godly and to work miracles, and to intervene, to change the what's happening. So it is very seductive and it's very slippery. And I think what's been stripped out is, before we had all these possibilities before us with medications and gizmos and things, medicine was very much the art of accompaniment. Healing happened by people being with people. And I think in our seduction, the last 170 years, that's gotten eased. That's kind of been eked out. It has felt kind of irrelevant. In the world of transaction and fixing, as a patient, your job was to basically to lay still and
Yeah.
get out of the way. Um, and true enough, true enough. In some sense, I survived electrical burns, in part by just laying still, letting the doctors and nurses and everybody do their thing. So again, I want to be careful that I don't come off as hypercritical. I just simply mean to point back to this very basic thing that you were pointing to and pull it back into the mix. I think palliative care, in my understanding, the narrative of my field is, if anything, it's about this. It's about remembering this aspect of care, and that beyond cure, there's still healing to happen. And that is a relational witness process. So anyway, back to your question, if we can find a way to revisit and acquire, regain, reacquaint ourselves with this lost art, I think it would change the world. I think it would change healthcare, and I think that would change, and it would part, and healthcare would participate in changing the world. I'm not. That may sound gratuitous or pandering or just dramatic, but I actually believe that.
I think there's a pushback, and it's with a cost, and it's a privilege, and it's called concierge medicine. Maybe that is a way of saying, "This is getting ridiculous.
Mhm.
I get 15 minutes with a patient. This isn't working." Patient says,
Mm.
"My doctor doesn't even know who I am. I'm a chart, essentially, and everything is send me out, farm me out to the next person." I'll pay the people who can do that for the doctor to be a 1960s doctor who will sit and look at me and ask me about my wife and my kids and have a relationship. I mean, I in the '70s remember in Philadelphia going to the pediatrician, and I think it was at his home or he came to us. I don't even remember where it was. Maybe it was an intimate office, but it was very sweet, and he gave me a lollipop, whatever it was, sat me on his knee. I think I remember. I could see why that went away, but, there was some sense of knowing, and maybe concierge medicine is it's just pointing to the idea that there's a problem. people are saying, I want that again. I want that back in the relationship.
Correct. And I'm with and concierge brings up this sort of socioeconomic issues that, as a force can kind of drive a wedge of haves and have-nots even further. And so obviously problems. And to your point, I really get the statement there. It's a saying, no, I'm not going to work in this way anymore. If you're a clinician and as a patient, no, I'm not going to put up with this hyper reduced kind of unhealing kind of care. So it makes tons of sense. I hope it will ultimately register as pressure on a system that the system has to revisit itself so we don't go too far down this road of have and have nots. Because after all, mortality, illness, vulnerability, these are the very things that link us all, among other things. But these are sort of a proof of our connection. And so if we don't honor this ashes to ashes nature of being alive, that we all die, if we sidestep the linking, the uniting variable in there, I think we will suffer even more. So hopefully this concierge moment is really it's a resistance. It's a moment. It's a kind of saying no to what's been going on, and hopefully let's remember to revisit rebuilding the system in a way that works better for everybody. So, but meanwhile, it's a good. I appreciate the statement.
And I think, as you say, it's a symptom, it's a pushback. It's saying something's broken and I'll buy a fix, even though that's ultimately not going to be the solution. I want to get to something more intimate, which is the spirituality of living and dying. And I think whether it's religious or I'll say obliquely just spiritual, what's what's your sense of that, the importance of that
Mhm.
and where that works beautifully? Maybe even rituals and traditions that you see that you think add beauty
Mhm.
to this process of aging and ultimately dying.
Well, boy, I so spiritual. Um, I wonder how you define it, Rabbi. I'll throw out, for me, spirituality is the sense that everything is connected, even though I can't kind of prove it. And there's a little bit of faith there. I just feel it. I seem to believe it. I seem to even know it in my bones, even though I couldn't pull out a blackboard and write a proof and prove it to you. And so for me, spirituality is that sense that underneath everything we are uh, connected. So let me pause there. How might I'm just kind of curious. How would you define that word, Rabbi, in your work?
I agree 100% with what you said. I also think it's the acceptance that there is a seen and an unseen, a known and an unknown component to all of us and everything, including experiences. That's how I think about it in this moment.
One of the things I think in modern life has stripped, um, accidentally, perhaps I don't think maliciously, is the rituals. After all, people have been suffering and finding joy and making meaning and dying for a long, long time. And so spiritual traditions, as sort of nodes of history, have documented and kept pace with human being human for so long. So I think there's a really great call to return to rituals specifically to help carry us through a ritual, like as a vector to pull us across a divide or a hard moment. Um, Very often when we're sick or struggling, we don't know what to do. We don't know where it's safe to talk. Um, and I think ritualizing that, holding space for each other, ritualizing that space so we know we're safe, we know we're held, and we're touching into something older and bigger than ourselves. And by itself, that sends a really kind of a beautiful signal and helps us feel safe. So I think one thing we could do that would be very beautiful in this country would be to sort of inventory rituals, and reacquaint ourselves with these rituals and make them available to each other. And where they have gone missing, we can also create new ones. So anyway, I'm going off a little bit, but so I do think there's something really really important for us there. And Rabbi, I guess that's a question back to you. How often do you see yourself pulling rituals from the ancients that are helpful now?
I think about ritual, especially at kind of transition points in milestone moments, as really powerful. Like the wedding ceremony is saying, this isn't a small moment. And I think the same thing happens around death, where I think the ancients got something before we complicated it or decided we had to look away from it because it's uncomfortable. They said it's essential to being human to die with dignity. And by the way, that the rituals around death and dying take you from one point to the next. They kind of usher you. It's kind of back to that accompaniment idea. The ritual itself accompanies you and moves you through. So it gives you a cadence, it gives you a tempo for those moments of life. These are the things we do, these are the things we don't do. These are the things that take our focus, and these are the things that really are distractions and don't belong now. And I think even about death and dying, the Shiva ritual in the Jewish tradition, where it says, "This is and is meant to be intense in a way that other times in life aren't. This is extraordinary. So therefore, don't go out into the street where people are gonna ask you inane questions.
Mm.
Stay home and let the people come and care for you, literally nurture you and feed you."
Mhm.
And then you move from that to the 30 days, and it says, "This is just another for several more steps from where you were. You are changed, but you're still in an intense period of mourning," and it goes on. So I wonder if we couldn't get to a place in medicine where we certainly already are in a good place that there are chaplains, multi-faith,
Mhm.
interfaith chaplains in
Mhm.
our medical settings.
Mhm.
But I wonder if you couldn't come into a hospital setting and part of what's on the menu would be a spiritual journey, not religious. There must be some other way to characterize it to where it's inclusive, but that lets people know that you're not just going to be seen as an object for care. And the process, even from checking in to checking out, whatever that looks like, is going to be a process of being seen,
Mhm.
being recognized for what we see of you and what we don't see of you.
Mhm.
That's the spiritual component. And I think the other part that we don't know is the backstory of who's coming and sitting before us, right?
Mhm.
So part of that is a more holistic experience of the patient, as you say. The person who comes before us has a life story behind them, as well as their natural concerns and
Mhm.
illness,
Mhm.
whatever that is. I want to move us away from this for a moment to something maybe a little more
Mm.
concrete. You famously and notably went through the accident that you went through when you were a college student, and then it formed your story, right?
Mhm.
It certainly influenced your story.
Mhm.
And I lost a parent. I lost my mom at a very young age to a drunk driver.
Mhm.
So I think, yes, that was clearly a pivotal moment in my life. It taught me that death enters life. It taught me I can list the things that now as an adult, I think it taught me. It led to your vocation. And I think about the Latin root of vocation and the fact that it meant that, if I'm right, it gave you a sense of being called to do something with your life. Does that still ring true to you as much as it did when you went through it in the early years?
It does, Rabbi. And first of all, let me just say I love what you're saying about ritual and how it holds us, and the experience that's possible in healthcare. These little moments of rites of passage, these little thresholds. We don't have to. Doesn't have to be a big deal. Little pause, little eye contact, little touch, whatever it is. All those moments can be ritualized and turned into rites of passage. And, I just I love what you're putting down there, Rabbi. I would love to see that materialize more fully. So thank you. And then to your point about my experience with these injuries, it's so interesting. So yes, it did provide ultimately a vocation, a calling, and it informed my voice, my vox in that. Um, and I decided that essentially vulnerability and strength were, uh, unbreakable siblings. They go together. And I started to feel my own strength in my vulnerability. And maybe that's a paradox, it probably is, but I think paradoxes are all over this work. But back to your point, yes, I did feel a calling. And what may be important to say here too, and I still do, is that I use that language now in retrospect. At the time, as I was fumbling my way, bumping into walls, bumping into parts of myself and others, and trying to metabolize this experience, I didn't have a grand plan that I was aware of. I may have been functioning in one, but I didn't experience a calling like a thunderbolt. It was the small day-to-day quotidian stuff that pulled me in a direction. By dealing with my life, by being true to what was actually happening to me, I learned some things and I found motion, kinesis, movement, a momentum, and off I went and am still going. And now as I look back over the arc of these last 35 years, I see a coherent, cohesive story. Um, but I just want to be clear to anyone wondering, where's my vocation? Uh,
Right.
I it, that only lights up in retrospect. I was just trying to make my way through the day honestly, and off I went. Following those cues, that brought me here. That clarified something of a calling. Buddhists might say dharma, some purpose that is just endemic to my life. It's there whether I choose to pick it up or not. And hopefully I've chosen to pick it up.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I also agree. I loved what you said about the fact that it is seen when we read our story backwards at any point where we stop and say, instead of looking to what I'm doing next with my life, let me just see what's been written so far. Maybe that influenced me in that way, and the fact that I couldn't move in the world in that same way shifted me in a different direction. And I think about the fact that you went from what was your undergrad before you went into art?
I
What was
was
your undergrad when you had the
I
electrocution
was
accident?
studying Chinese language and East Asian studies. That's where I was headed.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
With what in mind? What did you wanna do with that?
Nothing. I was very much a liberal arts student. I was just there to learn, to be fascinated with life, and that's what was
Right.
pulling me.
Yeah, by the way, you remind me of something I heard Brené Brown say on a podcast,
Mm.
maybe with Adam Grant, and she was talking about her daughter coming to her in the bedroom kind of, whenever this was, bereft, saying, "I don't know what to major in. I don't know what to do in college." And her mom said, "Fantastic. Major in curiosity."
Right on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So that's you.
Yep, for sure. Thank you.
So you went the circuitous route. You
Mhm.
said, "I'm going in with a quest to learn
Mhm.
and to be inspired and fascinated." And then the accident, are you comfortable calling it an
Yeah,
accident?
yeah. Mhm.
The accident, which it was, I guess,
Mhm.
um, certainly wasn't intended,
Mhm.
led you to rethink what mattered in that moment, and that took you to a study of art,
Correct.
and then you ended up going toward what you've been doing ever since, which is caring for people and reducing suffering. Art also is reducing suffering in its own beautiful
Of
way.
course. Absolutely. And, yeah, I'm sorry if I just interrupted you, Rabbi.
No, not at all.
Yeah. No, to me, there's a continuity, studying art and studying medicine. It was all about just different angles, points of view, perspective. I mean, what I learned by studying the arts was perspective, was how to see. And as you know, that's its own skill. There's everything in front of us all the time, and what gets our attention and how we how we begin to look for things and what we see is a real a powerful skill that takes time and nurturing, and art helped me do that. Learn how to do that. There was so much about my life that I couldn't change, but I could change how I saw it. And I could take the raw material of my experience and make something of it. And that was sort of an artistic process, and that I just lifted wholesale to my life in general. I just looked at myself every day as raw material. What do I want to make of this? Very useful for me, super helpful. Um, and art, art works with limitations of material, of the subject, whatever it is. You're in constant relationship that way to everything, including limitations. So this was a way to, if not celebrate my experiences, certainly make from them, make of them. And so that's what my undergraduate education ended up being, very therapeutic for me, super helpful. And then that same kind of thinking was like, okay, well, now where do I want to apply this seeing? And healthcare, medicine lit up as as a way for me to use my a cauldron in which I could use my experiences and operate from my experiences where they might be of some value, not to overcome, but something perhaps even of an advantage with patients. You can take one look at me and know that I've been in the bed, and that begets a little bit of trust. And from that trust begins a relationship where I might actually get a chance to see you, and you might just get a chance to be seen. And so, anyway, just completely consistent with our conversation today, Rabbi, these were the nodes that pulled me from the arts into medicine and into this current moment. All piece of continuity, all the same story, unraveling, unfurling.
And unfolding creativity. So, what's the creative process that you're deeply involved in right now, or is it more general in terms of mental health? Your organization's work as a creative force in medicine.
Well, yeah. So mental health. Sonia Dolan, my business partner, we started that in the pandemic. And it really was noting that with all this suffering and spinning happening in the pandemic, we needed some place, a safe place to fall apart. And so we created Metal, pulled it out of the medical model. It's sort of palliative care counseling and coaching, a place you can call up and talk to clinicians like myself, also nurses, social workers, all the folks from the palliative care world, and be seen and spend a full hour or more with people and just really get back to something very simple, exactly in tune with what we've been talking about today in terms of accompaniment. So that's mental health, and we are now currently injecting with a lot of resourcing. We're building out the website, et cetera. It should be done by this summer, and having a much larger web presence, all in the effort to be a place for direct care, to talk to actual human beings, and like I say, be a safe place to fall apart. So the Metal is our creative enterprise, and we're working out the care model now, all about relational care and accompaniment. And that's where we're not trying to change anyone or anything. We're trying to be with each other, and that may have an effect of changing the experience. But we're not. That's not. We're not saddling Metal with changing the world. We're saddling Metal with being a safe place to be seen and to see. So next to Metal, we are starting what we're calling Common Denominator, sort of a studio or laboratory to take on projects, to begin to create, find a way to fall in love with reality and to take our place in helping to create it. So trying to tend the soil where a model like you laid out for healthcare could take root. So these projects include building a place, a care center where architecture and design and the environment of care can be taken seriously as a therapeutic endeavor in of itself. Another project will be how to advance sort of qualitative measure. I think healthcare gets in trouble because it just keeps falling back on what's easy to study, quantitative stuff, dichotomous variables, yes, no, whereas the experience of life is generally a qualitative one. So if we can help healthcare and other systems metabolize qualitative data, I think we'll be in a different place. And then another project is building out an online resource library, taking advantage of what's AI. We can really actually boil the ocean. So can we make all human knowledge, all existential framing and spiritual framing, and make it available in a sort of a library of resources, so that we can use information as a leveling device rather than a divisive one. Um, So those are some of the projects that Common Denominator is taking on, and the work at the systems and structural level, let metal work on the sort of individual level. Common Denominator is trying to change the world. Mental health is trying to be in the world, something like that.
Sounds like evolution rather than revolution,
Yeah,
where we need it.
yeah.
It sounds fantastic
Thank you.
and worthwhile. I'm going back to that thought that maybe just like you'd get a menu of care, you'd get a menu of the kind of food that you're gonna have in a hospital that people usually dread.
Mm,
But what if for whatever duration you're going to be under care, you'd be given a different kind of medal
mm.
excuse me, menu. There's medal menu, which is to say there's another aspect that you can have, you can choose to have because this
Mm.
we can offer this too, which is another way to frame this experience and to give it meaning and to give it beauty.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to take more of your time. I'm really grateful for it,
Oh,
and it's a
I'd love
pleasure
you to take
meeting.
more of my time. It's such a pleasure, Rabbi, being with you. Honestly, this is such beautiful stuff to talk about with you. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. I'm going to post a picture of the cover of the book again because it's really important.
Mm.
Hopefully, people will have the courage to give this good book too. And just to thank you very much for the conversation, much more importantly, for the work that you do.
Oh, thank you, Rabbi. I appreciate it. I appreciate you putting this material into the world, having these conversations, and you being you in the world. Thank you very, very much.
This season is produced and edited by Jonah Li-Paz. Content editing by Bronwyn Li-Paz. Digital marketing by Notebook Media. The Meaning Mindset is hosted by Rabbi Ron Li-Paz. Find us wherever you find your podcasts.